building to improve specs. And so today, yes, you can tap and then you're prompted with a confirmed transaction, and maybe it's a little hard to read exactly what that transaction is going to be. We think that that's broader work beyond just messaging, where bringing up education around what you're doing, being able to show more educational material around the simulation, being able to have like a status update or failure retries, or I don't know, I think about the times in Web 2 where I've sent an email and I didn't mean to, or I put the wrong person on it and I realized it right after I send it. Like Superhuman, which is a great email client, doesn't send the email for 10 seconds. It lets me like see that it got sent because they recognize it as that moment you realize you screwed up. And so there's just a ton of opportunity here. I think a very rich and mature design space around how do you help people do the right thing and make sure they're doing it. There's no doubt that when you introduce a new interactivity mode, a mode for interaction, like a message you can just tap a button on, it introduces new ways to make mistakes, but it also introduces new and delightful experiences, and those kind of go hand in hand. It's really on us as builders and designers and whatnot to get that spec right. I don't know if that answers your question at all, but it's a hard question. It's really not. It's not straightforward.
Yeah, it does. It does, and it's certainly a bit unfair to kind of both figuratively and literally blame the messenger here. It's not. You are the.
I love that. Nice one.
You're the one that's bringing that to the user. You're the last sort of piece of that chain. But I think that's really interesting that it is, it's not your fault per se that this is how it's built, and I think that's a really interesting point to make.
Right. But we have the opportunity, and I think that the people who are interested in this problem, let's say specifically in Web3, there's some great minds working on it. I love the blame the messenger. There's another big problem, not to FUD our own problem space, but identity is a really big problem. How do you know? Like, you think about the problems in Web 2, specifically in like crypto Web 2, like Discord, Telegram, all that with scammers and whatnot. Like, be very frank, we do not mince words around this. When you introduce messaging, you introduce a new potential opportunity for users to be either marketed to in an unsolicited way or scammed or misled. There's all kinds of problems. So we know that when you bring in a new and very powerful enabling technology, a lot comes with it. But the reason I'm bringing this up is because another key part of our smart messaging thesis is how do you minimize unwanted inbound? And we don't have to necessarily get into this in super detail because it's not live yet today, but on our roadmap with V2 or V3 of our protocol, we will be introducing a financial barrier to cold inbound. And this is where Web3 can really sing and improve some problems that we have with Web2 messaging. Like, I've had my Gmail address since 2003, and it's wrecked. Like, I get hundreds of emails every day. Google only actually filters some of that to spam. A ton of it is like stuff that maybe I opted into like 10 years ago. And I for some reason, unsubscribing is not fixing it, any of that. So even like businesses that are well-intentioned and want to sell, not to mention, people who are bad actors and want to mislead you and do things like that, we have a very exciting plan on how to use these native properties of Web3 to minimize the sort of to change the economic equation for anyone who might want to try to reach you without your consent. And it's quite simple, still quite experimental, but there's a world in which, for example, if I am receiving messages from folks that I haven't spoken to, they may need to buy and use in some capacity some identity token affiliated with me, that in order to cold message me that first time, they may actually need to spend some money, and that money will largely accrue to me. Is a world in which, and this comes to sort of like the question people always ask, which is like, how would dialect monetize? And in that world, let's say most value accrues to the recipient of the message, some small amount of value may accrue to dialect. And then this is an idea that Mark has had that really gets me excited, is even inbox hosters. So if we're building this decentralized inbox, obviously that's a great experience and a great new way for folks to message between different dApps, but how do you incentivize a dApp or a mobile wallet to host an inbox? And there may be a world in which some small cut of sort of like, this is literally where the person read the message. This is a bit of a tangent, all of which is basically to say there are all kinds of interesting new problems because it's an interesting new design space. and thankfully a lot of interesting new solutions as well. And one of the ones we're most excited, and this is like part 3 of our smart messaging thesis, is how do we